Welcome, everybody. My name is Jenny Best, the founder of Solid Starts, and we are here today to talk about the launch of our book. We are so grateful to Penguin Random House for hosting us today. This feels really special for us. I have with me an incredible team of experts, and I'd like them to introduce themselves. We're going to have some conversation about some of the most frequently asked questions that we get from parents who are just about to start solids with their babies, trying to decide whether to do baby-led weaning or spoon feeding and all of the anxieties that come around choking and allergies. We're going to get into all of that in a conversation, and we'll have some time for questions toward the end as well. So, let's get started. Dr. Ruiz, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Jenny. My name is Dr. Rachel Ruiz. I am a board-certified pediatrician and pediatric gastroenterologist, or a poop and tummy doctor, and I'm also a mom of 4.
And Kim, please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I'm Kim Grenawitzke. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist and international board certified lactation consultant, and of course the personal assistant for 2 young girls.
Venus.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Venus Kalami. I'm a board certified pediatric dietitian and nutritionist, and I lead things all pediatric nutrition at Solid Starts. So happy helping babies feel happy at the table.
And if I may say, these experts are the absolute best in their individual fields. So if you have a question, ask it now, because you're going to get the best answer you will ever get from any professional in the medical world. Okay, let's get started with the very beginning. What is baby-led weaning? My role here is sort of the mom in chief. I started Solid Starts to help other parents feel less anxious about starting solids, and to know that there's other ways of starting solids and introducing food that you can make unique to yourself. It doesn't have to be this rigid path of this way or that way. You can do a mix of what works for your family and your local food culture. My hope with all of this is that we help other parents raise happy eaters. Kids who want to come to the table, who are, you don't have to do, here comes the airplane, right? Or watch this video so I can, shove this food in your mouth. And when we look back at how we got there, it's actually kind of an interesting story. So we're going to dive into that. But Kim, can you just tell the audience, what is baby-led weaning? Because I think people think of Solid Starts as like, oh, they're baby-led weaning. And I think that might be a foreign term for some people. So
Absolutely. I love this question because there's so much misinformation out there, and a lot of people just don't know what we're talking about. So baby-led weaning is actually an approach to starting solids that focuses on your baby feeding themselves. It's simply a focus on your child's independence, and you as their parent trusting them to be able to take this next step in their development. So of course, a lot of people focus on the kind of food you offer, but at the end of the day, the thing that's the most important for baby-led weaning, and for what we as professionals really focus on, is letting your baby take the lead in this step in their feeding journey.
Which I think feels really counterintuitive to parents, because it feels like an infant that might be helpless at that moment, at that age. And I would actually love to hear, Dr. Ruiz, you tell a little bit why you decided to endorse baby-led weaning. You were at least one of the first pediatricians in the United States to publicly not just endorse baby-led weaning, but to really promote it, I think, explicitly. Can you tell us, from a doctor's perspective, why you felt that was safe, and what motivated you to take a public stand in that way?
Jenny, I love this question. Really, it came down to when my firstborn, Sophia, she was getting ready to start solids. She was sitting with some support. She was really interested when I was eating. And even as a pediatrician at that time, I felt very nervous about this next step, because we just got a routine down. We just, had the schedule down, just had the sleep down. And then I was thinking about, okay, my training, what I counsel, my own patients, and it didn't sit right all of a sudden. As a mom, it didn't sit right with me, because I love to eat. And I just didn't understand why I couldn't share that connection with my daughter. So I had heard the term of baby-led weaning in the past. And I was like, what is that? Because in training, it's oftentimes, it's just information that's passed down. And what I found in my research is that that's what it is. It's spoon feeding purees is not evidence-based. It's just, as pediatricians, we're told, what the pediatricians before them were told. And when
There's actually not a lot of research with infants, and maybe rightfully so, because I'm testing on babies and things like that. But that was one thing that you taught me that really surprised me, that all these things I thought to be true were literally just what like their grandparents did.
Yes.
It wasn't like because there was this huge research study that showed that that's the best way of feeding a baby or anything like that.
Right, and when
that was shocking to me.
Yeah, when you dive into the research, you find that when you feed yourself, the risk of choking decreases. And as
even for a baby?
Even for a baby. And that for me was mind-blowing.
So it is safer for a baby to either reach for the spoon or pick up the food and put it in their own mouth than for like the parent to place a piece of food in baby's mouth?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And that has research behind it.
That has research behind it. And the other...
Can we talk about choking? Because I feel like we're going,
we're going
right into it.
We're going there. We're going there.
So when I was a parent and I spoon fed my first, it didn't go so well, to be honest. He didn't like me kind of coming at him with the spoon, he's turning his head, arching his back, and honestly didn't like the texture of puree. It was not a pleasant experience, and which is why I started researching baby-led weaning, as you all know. But even with that huge motivation to do something different, I was terrified of letting him pick up the food and put it in his own mouth. Would he take a bite? Would you choke immediately? How do I prepare the food? This book dives deep into the myths of choking and some of the myths that even some doctors today are still perpetuating, as I've discovered with you. Can you talk about how common or not choking is? Like, how worried do parents need to be?
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's really hyped up. And maybe some of that is, maternal or paternal instinct of wanting to protect your child, of course, but like what are the statistics? Like, how common is this for babies or toddlers?
And I think before we get into the statistics, what we need to debunk or to talk about is the fact that gagging is often considered choking
by a parent. Okay. So misunderstood.
Correct. And then that was then communicated to a pediatrician, for example. But we have two tubes. We have a breathing tube and we have a food tube. And choking is when a food or object gets stuck in that breathing tube. Your baby is silent, or they have a really, like they can't breathe. If your baby is coughing, if your baby is red, they are not choking. They're
because
like,
air is getting in.
Air is getting in. Air is getting in. But then, so now going into the statistics, because we hear, choking is the leading cause, one of the leading cause of death in young children. That is absolutely false. When you talk about risk, less than 1% or a fraction of a percent.
Wait, less than 1. Less than 1%, like 1.
Less than 1% of deaths among young infants or toddlers is due to choking on food.
But now, baby-led weaning, I think, is sort of having I like to say I think it's how people were feeding their babies before, like the Vitamix blender or whatever came, before commercial machinery made it possible to make a puree. So we know it's not necessarily new. And I think for the same reason, it's not necessarily a fad that way, because I think it's how people were doing before. They had machines like that. But is the research flawed because we're not really factoring in this massive change of baby-led weaning, like the rise of baby-led weaning?
Listen, I have combed through that research. You know this, but because I need to, I've practiced finger food first or baby-led weaning with all 4 of my children. I see it, really make an impact on my patients and their families. And there has been no change, no increase.
No increase in choking.
No increase in choking related deaths.
But are there studies now that...
There has been a study that looked at the risk or the rate of choking among traditionally spoon-fed babies and babies that fed themselves.
Okay.
There's
increase. No difference.
No difference.
It's not, okay.
Nope. And we know that when...
folks. Okay.
Yes. And the other thing I'd like to mention, too, is that we often hear that your baby needs teeth to eat. Now, we chew with our molars. What do we use our front teeth for? Biting,
Yeah.
tearing.
Yeah.
And so
And when do molars erupt typically?
after their first birthday, and sometimes even closer to the second year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't just kick the can down the road because you'd be waiting until age 2, maybe even age 3 for them to have all those molars all the way in and able to grind. Well, let's talk about you're telling us that babies don't need teeth to chew real food, but I can hear sort of, I don't know, I saw steak on your Instagram profile. Kim, you're an infant swallowing, you're licensed as an infant swallowing expert as well. Can you talk about or reassure parents? You're telling me they don't need teeth, but like, I don't believe you. Can you like reassure them and what, how?
So, you know, how is a really great question. And over the last 50 years, there have actually been research looking at how we learn to chew and how we chew food, which, of course, science evolves over time and researchers have come out and actually looked at these skills. And if anyone is eating something right now, if you put food in your mouth, the first thing you do is you don't bite down on it. You take your tongue and move the food over. So we need to teach our babies to actually move their tongue around so they can chew. It has nothing to do with the fact that there are teeth there to chew. We need our tongue to do its job. One of the reasons I love finger food is that it helps the tongue learn this skill. When your tongue is stimulated when you're a baby, so a piece of food goes in their mouth, their tongue darts over to meet that food, which is exactly the motion we want them to do. And the more they practice
But once it moves it over without any teeth, are you saying the jaws or the gums are strong enough to break it down?
Yes. So the difference between teeth and no teeth is grinding. So something like a peanut, you're going to need to grind down.
Don't give peanuts to your children.
Don't give
right
peanuts to your baby.
Grind them, peanut butter, whatever.
But your gums are going to mash.
I mean, do introduce peanuts early. We have to talk about that too.
We'll get there.
But whole peanuts,
No
please do
whole
not.
Peanuts, no whole peanuts.
Please do not. But something like a peanut or something firm like that needs to be ground down with teeth. But something like avocado or even a big strip of chicken just needs to be mashed and pushed on by the gums. And if anyone puts their finger in a baby's mouth and touches their gum, they actually can bite down pretty darn hard. You're surprised at how hard they can bite down. Those muscles in the mouth are really, really strong.
And of course, we have the Solid Starts app. You can download it now. Our entire First Foods database is free to access, and it shows you exactly how to cook, prepare, and cut the food for your baby's age and development. So that's one of the things we wanted to make sure that was accessible information. And so you can download the Solid Starts app now to figure out how do I make a steak safe for a 6-month-old or an 18-month-old and so forth. Venus, let's talk about another worry that I know a lot of parents have, which is particularly with baby-led weaning. I feel like I see babies eating this way, but I don't see them swallowing the food. How worried should parents be about the baby not actually consuming much of the food at the start? And are there any particular nutrients that they should be focusing on? Or I'd love for you also to share maybe some of your favorite first foods as a dietitian.
Absolutely.
I think that's a popular question as well.
I would be happy to answer that. So there are a lot of concerns when it comes to baby-led weaning and introducing foods. And I think one of the top one is, how do I know my baby's getting enough? How do I know that they're getting too much? And I think it's helpful to reduce the pressure for parents and caregivers and give permission to say it's not about how much we're eating, especially when we're introducing. This special moment is about the experience of sitting down at the table together, building this habit, building this routine, bringing joy to the table, and really concentrating on building a really positive and beautiful dynamic.
I hear you saying that, and I also hear, but like this doctor over here is going to tell me if my baby's growing or not, and I'm already nervous that they're going to fall off the charts or not track along.
100%.
I feel like you get pregnant, and the first thing they're like, how big is your baby? And just tracking. And I think it adds a lot of anxiety.
Absolutely.
So you're saying the most how is to not worry about how much they're consuming, but as a dietitian, why, how, when do we need to worry about them actually swalling the food?
Absolutely. I think I would love to move the question away from when do we need to worry to how can I support them, so that we're less focused on what do I need to worry about and how can I support them most. And I feel that that reframing is really positive and brings the best version of the parent and the caregiver and the baby to the table. So,
and they still have breast milk or formula. There's
exactly.
not like a light switch here. We're not turning one off and turning one on.
This is a gentle transition. So around 6 or so months of age, whenever baby is developmentally ready for solids, we want to introduce a variety of solids, but we want to keep in mind that breast milk and formula are going to be providing the majority, if not all, of baby's nutrition at that particular point. And as baby gets practice and time and experience, their solid food intake is going to increase between 6 to 12 months, and that's a gradual transition. And this is why we call it baby-led weaning too, because baby will gradually wean themselves off of formula or breast milk in a way that feels right for them, and in a way that they are in tune with their body and their fullness. So you might start off with like 1 or 2 meals a day around 6 months of age with very little expectation of consumption. And say around 8 or 9 months of age, you start noticing that, hey, my baby can actually get some food down, or maybe they need a little bit more time, right? And you might see some changes in their breast milk or formula intake or not, and that's okay. And as they get older, you see more and more solid food intake, and that's when
one goes up and the other
one goes up,
down.
yeah. And there are moments like during illness or teething where it's going to fluctuate a little bit, so it's not this perfectly linear process. It's kind of like it's about the destination and how you get there, and having a really good mindset around it. Now, you talked about nutrients too, and we talk a lot about, parents hear a lot about like, how do I know my baby's getting enough protein, or how do they get enough fat, or oh my God, iron. I never stopped hearing about iron. And the good news is that up until 6 months of age, breast milk and formula will be providing the iron that baby needs. And then it's on parents and caregivers to incorporate iron-rich foods like meats and beans and developmentally appropriate preparations of like nuts and seeds.
Also in the Solid Starts app,
Also
we
in
have
the
the
Solid
iron
Starts app.
filter. It shows you all the foods.
And in the book. And in the book.
book.
Not a filter, but like ideas. And so the idea is that, well, baby won't eat much at that point, but again, they need to build the skills, they need to build that routine, they need to build that habit of offering these types of foods. And most babies who do a baby-led weaning approach, and families focus on offering those iron-rich foods and are intentional, not in a pressure-forward kind of way, but just intentional, are able to have babies who have normal iron levels, similar iron levels to babies who are on purees, actually. So we have research that tells us that baby-led weaning or versus puree feeding can have similar iron levels. So that's a really exciting thing for parents to keep in mind, that they can get enough. We just to redefine what is enough, and keep in mind that breast milk and formula do a lot of the heavy lifting in that first year of life. And just give ourselves a lot of grace at the table.
Yeah, and I think too with like we're very much data obsessed in our society, and your child is more than that data point on that growth chart. That growth chart just is a conversation starter and not the diagnosis.
100%.
I love that. It's so interesting because I feel like a lot of the issues that you as a feeding therapist might see later in toddlerhood can be prevented, or as a dietitian, I know you support kids who are struggling and to gain weight or otherwise. But it seems like a lot of the issues actually stem from the lack of trust, I think, in parents themselves and also their babies. Kim, you wrote a beautiful chapter on trust in the book. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, like help the parent who might feel afraid of even starting solids trust themselves and their baby? How would you coach that parent if they were sitting right here?
I think the most important thing that we can say to parents is your attitude when you show up at the table matters. So if coming to the table and serving your baby mashes or soft foods makes you feel safe and comfortable, that is how I would want you to start. Because how you show up at the table will affect your baby. So if you show up at the table feeling excited and feeling like you're sharing something with your baby that you love, your baby's gonna feel that too. We want to make the table a place your baby wants to be. Now, of course, this is a big step for every single baby and every single family. But in the same way that we wouldn't expect a baby to ride a bike the first time we offer them one, we're not expecting them to be perfect at the table either. what we're expecting is that they're going to take some time to learn new skills. When your baby's on the floor the first time they accidentally look at their hand and they notice that there's a toy there, they learn something new. And eventually they're rolling to their side. But they're doing that over and over and over again. And typically as parents, we're like, that's silly. What are they doing down there? But we don't expect them to roll over perfectly. We trust that over time, their little bodies will figure it out. And yes, there are babies that need some help with those developmental skills, but generally speaking, and you can probably talk to your practice here too, babies will figure these things out.
Yes.
But when it comes,
we don't have to do it for
we
them.
don't have to do it for them. But when it comes to starting solids specifically, we have this feeling as parents that we need to control this.
Yes. Yeah.
But our babies are magically designed to learn these skills too. We just need to set up an environment that they can succeed. Now, that can mean giving your baby a spoon of Greek yogurt, for example, or mashed up avocado, or smushed sweet potatoes, whatever it is that feels safe to you. But we can meet them exactly where they're at and say, I trust you to figure this out. I trust that you're going to make mistakes. It's not going to look pretty sometimes.
It'll be messy.
It's going to be messy. You may spit the food out. You may get it all over your hair. You may feed the dog a little bit. But all of these little mistakes are what help your baby
You
learn.
may take a way too big bite of food and then have to go through that learning process of, what do I do now?
Yes.
Do I try to spit it out? Do I try to swallow it? I think that's one of the things. I want to talk a little about allergens, because I know it's or allergies is a kind of a concern, since we have Dr. Ruiz here with us, and we have a wonderful allergist on our team who wrote an incredible chapter on introducing food allergens like egg and peanut. Well, first, we know that allergies were on the rise for some time in the pediatric population, and that the instructions or suggestions on when and how to introduce them has really changed. I mean, even from my first child to my twins, the recommendations changed. It used to be, don't introduce allergens at all until age 3, like avoid egg, avoid peanut, a very sort of, conservative approach. And I'd love for you to share what the current recommendations are from the medical community, and like, should a parent be introducing allergens in the parking lot of an emergency room, which is something I hear actually, really happens.
Yes.
We were scared over here. So talk to us about what the current recommendation is today.
Yeah, the current recommendation is that allergens should be started early and often, specifically peanut and egg. And what we mean by that is when your baby is ready to start solids, that is a perfect time to introduce allergens as well. We don't need to start them all at once. But the other thing to remember is not, to give your baby one, allergen on Monday and then check, done.
It's not a one and done here.
Not a one and done. We're not a one and done. It's consistent exposure. So it's something once you introduce, don't forget it. Continue it at least weekly. Now, the tricky thing or the interesting thing here is what research also tells us is that if you are at high risk for a food allergy, and that is if you have severe eczema,
the baby has the splotches and the dry patches.
Super dry patches of skin, or already has a food allergy, then to start earlier.
Like something in formula or something like that.
Or you can start just by putting a little bit of peanut butter, mixed with formula, a little bit of water or breast milk on your finger and just have them suck. It's easy. Yeah, nothing too crazy. And no, you don't need to give them your, food allergen or potential food allergen in the parking lot. If anything, to decrease parental anxiety, we recommend, give it to your child on a weekday, preferably, when your pediatrician's office is open, maybe in the morning or, late morning, early afternoon.
When
so
people are answering the phones and can help you.
Yes.
Right.
Not during a 3-day weekend.
Let's talk about allergic reactions. Now, we've talked about sort of introducing them early, around 6 months, or when your baby is ready for solid, which is about around 6-7 months for most babies. And introducing them early can actually help prevent the food allergy from even developing at all. But what should parents be looking for in terms of what the symptoms are for an allergic
Yeah.
reaction. I'm seeding the question because I have experienced it multiple times myself. My firstborn has life-threatening food allergies, and we've had to do the EpiPen, we've had to do all the emergency room stuff. But what should parents be looking for, and how do we distinguish between mild and severe?
Mm-hmm.
Because a mild one, you can kind of wait it out and see how it goes, but when should we be calling 911? Like, what should we be looking for?
Yeah, these are great questions. So when it comes to food allergy or allergic reaction, as you mentioned, it can be from mild to severe. We can see changes in your skin, so hives or blotchiness. You can get lip swelling, tongue swelling.
So if babies
your baby can start maybe mouthing differently. Your baby may start.
Yes, one of my babies was biting his lower lip repeatedly, and I was like, "What's
trying to
what's he
scratch
doing?"
it almost,
Yeah, maybe it was itchy or swelling.
Yes, and then when it's severe, if there's any concern about difficulty breathing, that is when you need to call 911 immediately, or if you already have an EpiPen to administer it. Now, the interesting thing though with baby-led weaning is we get thousands of DMs. With pictures.
Yes.
And one thing we need to remember is that with self-feeding, your baby is putting food all over their
skin.
face.
It's touching their skin.
Yes. So we often see what's called contact dermatitis, or just your skin just getting a little reaction.
Which is not an allergic
completely
reaction.
normal. You can see this a lot with like citrus or tomatoes,
Strawberries.
acidic foods.
So like a red patch. So one of the things that really helped me as an allergy mom of a child with severe allergies was kind of just drawing that line that, okay, this is mild and this is severe. And one of the best pieces of advice I got from our pediatric allergist on the team was that there is no medium in this. Like mild is like maybe some localized hives, kind of like mosquito bites or a rash, or maybe some light itching, not really any facial swelling or anything like that. But severe is like when those symptoms start stacking on each other, where you've got the hives and the itching and, but also really matters, like, is it just on the face or is it all over the body? So what I do now is, if I suspect an allergic reaction may be underway, we do take like the baby onesie off, and so we can see the full belly, see what's going on, have a full picture of that. And if it feels like it's going everywhere or just kind of loading up, and one of the best pieces of advice, if it feels like something bad is about to happen, I believe that the leading allergy organization, is it FARE or FARE? FARE, FARE, they have a wonderful website. They have that on the magnet. If it feels like something bad is about to happen, call 911.
Yeah.
Like, don't hesitate.
Yes.
I think the other thing I'd like to also point out though, Jenny, is if you aren't sure your baby had an allergic reaction, or maybe it was mild, to not give that food, to pause, and then check in with your baby's pediatrician.
Yeah. And the book has a wonderful chapter on how to introduce allergens safely at home. How much. This is actually where you do want to measure. You were saying don't worry about how much babies are actually eating at the beginning, but with allergens, if you're very nervous, you could start with like a 1/4 teaspoon or 1/8 of a teaspoon of peanut butter, and kind of slowly work your way up.
And I think the difference there is that helps reduce risk of a larger reaction, and it also helps manage the parent or the caregiver's anxiety of like, I just want to start small and dip my toes in the water and see how it goes. So I think again, the measuring here is more about reducing risk and also reducing worry and building confidence.
Yeah, definitely. We could go so far into that.
But
we do, and we did.
We did write a book.
Venus, I want to read a paragraph that you wrote in the book that I find to be just so powerful. We'll see if I can read it without tripping over my words. This is in the nutrition chapter in the book, and she writes, in supporting baby, it is helpful to think about our own beliefs around food and body image. If you have concerns about baby's size and are tempted to shift how you feed your baby as a result, take a step back and a deep breath. Remember that baby is more than capable of communicating what they need, and that you are capable of listening. Can you talk about why you wrote that?
Absolutely. I mean, that is something I think every family needs to hear. And I think often when it comes to thinking about taking care of baby in every sense of the word, whether it's feeding or clothing them or raising them, parents and caregivers want to do their absolute best. And we're really oriented around baby, baby, baby. And sometimes we forget it's that we need to take care of our own mind, body, and souls so that we can be the best versions of ourselves as caregivers for baby. When it comes to feeding and introducing solids, it's not unusual for really anyone to have baggage around their body size, how they feel around their body, and bring that to the table.
I brought that to the table the first time around.
I think we all bring that to the table. It's really rare for someone to
so worried
feel
about how much they're eating, or
100%. So, I mean, the vast majority of people don't really feel super positive about their body. They have some element of diet culture ingrained in their mind. They think that we need to measure foods, that's too many calories, that's too high in fat. And if that's the kind of dialogue that you've had in your mind for months, years, decades even, and you're bringing that to the table, and now you're not tasked with just taking care of yourself and feeding yourself, but you're taking care of baby, it's hard to turn that off. And it turns into something else of like, oh my gosh, well, my baby's not filled out enough. They're not at the 99th percentile on their growth chart. Or, oh my gosh, like, is my baby getting too fat and chunky? And do I need to dial back how much food I'm giving them? Do I need to be controlling this process tightly? And as human beings, we are built, we have a very beautiful hunger and satiety mechanism within our body when we generally know when we're hungry. We generally know when we're full. It's not perfect. No system is, right? But baby has that too. And we want to lean into that and trust our baby and let them fumble and learn from their hunger and fullness. And we should eat too much sometimes. Baby should have that experience. And sometimes baby undereats
to learn what it
and
feels
gets distracted. And then they're like, okay, next time I need a little bit more leche from mommy because I did not drink enough and I was too distracted by my little sister who's kicking the soccer ball. So
one of the things that I learned from one of you along this journey, which was such an eye-opener, as an anxious mom who was very worried about how much her child was eating, her baby, was that you can actually, if you're controlling spoon feeding, like you're the one putting the spoonful in baby's mouth, you can accidentally or more easily overfeed a baby by spoon feeding than by letting baby just smush around and eat as much as they want. And I think it's kind of because of that, right? Like babies know when they're hungry
and they know when they're
full.
And there's also the temptation to just finish a package of food. So like, you know, the jars of baby food or a package of baby food, it's 2 ounces, 4 ounces.
And it's expensive and you've spent money on this.
It's expensive, you spend money, you have it there, like it's gonna go to waste if you don't have a fridge nearby. And so there's a strong temptation, I think, for a lot of parents to just like, just finish it, like clean it up and finish it. Like we might do ourselves, but a couple extra bites for a baby is actually a lot more when you think about a baby who's just learning.
Right, Kim, can you talk a little about that and sort of contrast what we would call controlled spoon feeding, where the parent is hanging onto the spoon the whole time and re-scooping and doing that, versus letting a baby feed themselves, and just like the speed of that and how that might lead to an overfeeding situation.
You know, even as an adult, the faster I eat, the more likely it is that I overeat because I'm not checking in with my body and how I feel. And for a baby, they're getting the majority of their nutrition from their breast milk and formula. And honestly, that's the stuff we want in their belly. So if you're sitting there scooping very quickly, trying to get to work, get to daycare, we all have very busy lives. I know my mornings are stressful in my house and I'm trying to go quickly too, but you're trying to get every last bite of that jar. Baby's not paying attention to how their belly feels. They're just paying attention to whatever this activity is. Your baby doesn't really get yet that food is supposed to make them feel full. They're just saying, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my grandpa wants me to do this thing. Okay, I'm going to continue to do it. And they also are very good at that age at sucking things off of a spoon and swallowing them, because guess what? They've been doing a lot of sucking and swallowing for the last 6 months from a breast or a bottle. So it's very easy for them to really get a lot of that food in very, very quickly. Now, when it comes to the finger food, they've got a lot to learn. They're going slowly because they're just not so sure about it yet.
But that gives the body some time to kind of realize if it's hungry or full.
Exactly, that gives the body some time to figure that out. And sometimes it's not even about being full, it's just, you know what? I'm done now. I've done enough. I'm tired. I'm ready to move on to something else.
I hit my limit.
I hit my limit. Yep. And it's time to go away from the table. So our babies communicate that through their bodies. They don't have the words to tell us, but they do things like push the food away, turn their head, fall asleep, or just get fussy. And that's not a bad thing.
It's not a failure.
It's not a failure. Your baby may sit at the table for 2 minutes and then start to get fussy. You can pick them up and put them on your lap and see if maybe they just needed a little snuggle or a little extra connection. But if they're over it, that's okay. Even those 2 minutes were 2 minutes of learning. That's what we're looking for.
Kim, you wrote a chapter in the book, I believe it's called The Magic Window. Can you tell the listeners what that is and why it's so important?
Yeah. The magic window is essentially from 6 to about 9 months of age. Sometimes would say 8. But the thing that is so magical about this is that your baby's skills absolutely perfectly line up for them to learn this brand new task. They are developmentally really interested in what's going on around them. They're also very curious and they learn through their mouths. So as we all know, if you have a baby crawling around your house right now, everything gets picked up and put in the mouth, especially during that 6 to 9 month window.
Pincer grasp doesn't discriminate.
No. And so they're very curious about the world, but they want to learn about the world through their mouth. They're starting to sit by themselves and they're able to use their hands to get stuff to the mouth. All of these things all happen at the same time in that 6 to 8 month window. The other thing that's really magical, and this is my nerdy therapist coming out here, but they have incredible reflexes to learn to chew and to keep them safe while eating, all at the same time that they developmentally love to put stuff in their mouth.
6 to 8 months, 6 to 9 months
6 to 8, 9 month window.
So it's actually safer to start chewable food between 6 and 8 months, or 6. You're just kind of dancing between 8 and 9. Tell us what it is.
The research is going to tell you 6 to 8.
Okay.
But we try to be flexible and give people a little bit of time. The research technically says 8 months.
Okay.
It is absolutely, I'm sorry, absolute is not the right word here. It is most likely safer to start chewable foods during that window for 2 main reasons. They have very strong ability to move food around by reflexes. So like the doctor hits your knee and your leg,
thing is
it's
happening.
automatic.
They don't have to try.
They don't have to try. And they have extra powerful reflexes to protect them against choking. And the most important component here that Venus has already touched on, it doesn't matter how much they eat. So this is the time that they can just practice over and over and over again and build those skills. So when the nutrition begins to be more important and we need them to eat a wider variety of food, they've practiced and built those skills. Again, they can't ride their bike on the first time.
Right.
We need to give them
I
a
love
chance
that
to learn.
analogy. We're going to take some questions from the audience now. So we've got some that came in already. Okay, Kim, I guess we're going back to you here probably. How do I know if my baby is ready? Ready for solid food, ready for chewable food.
So again, we're trying to reframe this conversation about starting solids as a developmental skill. We're looking at what our babies are doing developmentally that tells us they're ready for solids. The things that we want to see is we want them to be able to sit with a little bit of help. This does not mean you put them on the floor and walk away and go do the laundry, but you want them to be able to sit up with a little bit of help and not topple over. When they're sitting, they should be able to grab something from in front of them and bring their hand to their mouth. And then most importantly, especially from my therapist brain, is we want them to care about the food. We want them to have interest in food and eating. If you bring your 4-month-old to the table, they will probably fall asleep. They might fuss. They may want to nurse. But if you bring your 6-month-old to the table, they are sitting there and they are watching that spoon go from your bowl to your mouth. They are so interested and curious.
I remember that video that you two did of your daughter, Maya. I think was it Maya?
It was Maya.
Maya with the celery, and you were just like putting it, she's in a high chair, and Dr. Ruiz is moving a piece of celery, and she's just like, not like, could care less about the celery. And she was sitting well, but she wasn't interested yet in food, and so you didn't start solids just yet.
Right, but then how we get her ready, we can, so we are our children's best models. They want to be just like us. We're their biggest fans, or they're our biggest fans. So what you can do is you bring your child to the table and you show them how to eat, even if they're not seated in a high chair.
Babies learn, it was a mirror neurons or something, they learn from watching, literally learn. Their bodies will mimic if they see it. This is what you're talking about, right? Okay.
Yes, or then bring them into the kitchen, safely, no boiling pots of water, but like also just incorporate them in the smells too. Is just, and we have to remember too that food or gathering around a table is more than just eating. It's about culture, communication, community.
Yes.
And we want our babies and our kids to be part of the family. And that's one way to bring them in.
And, I know we've heard as parents those studies of how important it is to eat with your children. And that is hard for many families, especially
working families,
solo parents and things like that, or double jobs, what have you. Tell us, Kim, how important it really is to sit together, because it's sort of a perfect picture we're painting here. And I want to be mindful both that some babies aren't interested in food, and maybe you could talk a little about that, but also like, what if a family dinner is not possible eating together?
I think we can first reframe what a family dinner needs to look like. This does not need to be a 5-course meal that everyone's sitting down and we're using the fine china. A meal with your baby can be cutting up an avocado and you take a couple bites while baby has some too. And again, yes, they are watching and we are learning by watching, because babies learn by watching us. But most importantly, for safety, you need to be supervising your baby. I don't worry about a lot of things. I truly don't when it comes to eating. And neither of my girls. I had anxieties about choking. But the one thing that I always did was stay seated with them. And yes, of course, I was eating my food, but I had my eye on them. When it comes to feeding, you're not going to put them in the chair and then turn around and do something else. It's very important to be engaged.
Yes.
And if you're not eating your own food, you're hovering. You're hovering. It's really challenging.
You're staring at babies.
It's very awkward to
It's
eat if
very
mommy's watching
awkward.
you.
It's so challenging.
It's pressure.
It's absolutely pressure. And so if you're sitting there and you mash up some avocado and hand it over to your baby, and then you're slicing some avocado to put on a salad for you, or if you're going to have dinner a little bit later or a different time during the day, just share some of that food with your baby. Your baby wants to know that this thing is safe, that this thing tastes good, and that the person that I trust the most, mama, dada, whoever it is that's taking care of baby, I trust that person, and that person's putting it in their mouth, so that's probably safe for me to do too.
And the book has a wonderful chapter on what are the foods that both you and baby can eat together, so you don't have to make 2 separate meals
Same.
from the get-go. Okay, what if baby is interested in food but is not sitting, and they're past 6 months of age? What then?
Yeah, sitting is something that comes at a different time for babies. There are some babies that are sitting and looking really ready around 4 or 5 months, and others that are closer to 6.5, 7 months. If your baby's getting close to 7, 8 months and they're still having a hard time with sitting, I would definitely chat with your medical provider. There are lots of options for very low cost early intervention services to come to your home and simply give you some ideas of activities that you can do with your baby to help build those muscles. Now, we can't just make them sit. But what we can do is help set up an environment that they can essentially do baby exercise, right, to get those muscles stronger. If your baby's close to 7 months, I'm okay with it. A lot of babies need a little extra time. But if we're getting into that 7, 8 month window and you're really not seeing your baby starting to sit a little bit, chat with your provider.
Okay. Venus, big one here. The question is, I'm so worried about salt. Can you share more about its role in a baby's diet?
Absolutely. This is also a very common question. Sugar and salt, how do we navigate this? Is abstinence the approach that we need to take in infancy, or can we take a more moderate approach? So when it comes to salt, it actually is an important micronutrient in the body. It helps support our electrolyte balance. It helps muscles contract. It helps our heart work the way it's supposed to.
And breast milk has salt in it too, right?
Yes, breast milk has sodium and chloride, which make up salt. And so the idea here is that not that baby needs absolutely no salt, but we just want to make sure that baby doesn't get too much and isn't eating foods that are overly salty. And that's pretty easy to do. So the philosophy that we like to take here at Solid Starts and that we talk about in the book and in our app and our website as well is that try to reduce it if and where you can. Leave it out in your cooking or set aside a portion.
Don't sprinkle more on their food.
Yeah, you don't need to
season it.
sprinkle more on their food. If it makes sense, if and when it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you're traveling. Sometimes it's the holidays. So do your best when you can. And if you can't, eat your meal, have it with baby, enjoy it, and move on with your life. So that's our philosophy. Just do the best that you can. Baby doesn't need that much. And like we said in the earlier phases of eating solids, they're actually not even going to consume that much sodium anyways. And having some foods that may have some added salt here and there can actually offer up more options of different types of foods to offer. And as we know, variety is key, both for nutrition, for varied feeding experiences, getting different textures, having fun, engaging in your food culture. So we like to take a flexible approach around salt and sugar so that we can really fully participate in our food culture, that baby can have fun. And again, we're taking down the pressure and bringing down the notch on things to worry about.
So it's not unsafe for them to
It
have
is
food
not
with salt in it.
unsafe because, it's in formula, it's in breast milk. We need it to survive, everybody, including baby.
And Dr. Ruiz, I once heard you, I'm sure it was you, said something like, it would actually be very difficult, because there is something as salt poisoning, and people are Googling that, and that's why there's this fear, right?
Yeah.
But I've heard you say that it'd actually be really difficult for that to happen because, like, baby's body, like, would...
You would just reject it.
It's like, oh, this doesn't taste good, let's get it out
Yeah,
of my
baby
mouth.
would just spit it out. So
Yeah.
if maybe big sister was experimenting cooking and wanted to make scrambled eggs
Big sister.
and was a little heavy-handed with the salt.
Like a shaker fell in.
Right. Wrong lid was open, not the sprinkle side, and it fell in and offered that to baby. Not only you as a parent would immediately reject it, but so would baby.
Okay.
So
So there's sort of another built-in
Reflex.
natural protection for that. And I just want to also acknowledge that, Venus, you have been so wonderful in helping all of us, I think, who are interested in baby-led weaning, really soften our approach around salt, because I think 5 years ago today, when I was or it was more like 6, but when I was researching baby-led weaning, salt was all I heard about.
Totally.
And so, I fell into that as well. And I just want to acknowledge that you've brought so much to soften that and calm anxieties around it, but also just the piece about food culture is, I think, so important. And so thank you for reassuring that parents can share the foods that they love with their baby from the get-go.
Yeah, your food is good enough.
Your food is not only good enough, it's
the best.
you were generations before you were brought up on this food, and so it's a very special and spiritual experience to be able to share these foods with your child in a way that you can be proud of your culture and feel empowered and pass that along to your baby and keep that food culture alive.
I do want to acknowledge there's probably some folks out there who are like, I like Chipotle and McDonald's every day. Is that okay?
I mean, look, everyone has their starting point, and our goal isn't perfection. So my MO is often to say, like, if we are making progress forward, we are winning. So if a family really does have to rely on fast food day to day,
or
wants to, like, there might be reasons. There might be both working jobs or multiple jobs. It's delicious. I don't feel confident in the kitchen, and fast food is easier. So finding those pain points, the barriers to access of, like, getting in the kitchen more, or helping families make more nourishing choices when they go eat out, so that they can have variety, get allergen exposure, reduce salt and sugar if they can. That can be really empowering, because we can't change the circumstances that families live in, but we really can give them tools to work within what they have and help them gain more confidence, so that if they want to get in the kitchen and be cooking at home and offering home-cooked meals, that we are supporting them in the way that they need to, and we're hearing them in the way they need to be heard.
I love that. I feel like I've read a lot of DMs over the years from our followers on Instagram that basically say, like, my experience of food has been totally reshaped just by thinking about it more intentionally with my baby, and that it just positively shaped them as well. And that was a nice opportunity. Okay, next question is, what if my baby doesn't have typical allergic reactions, but seems like his tongue gets a bit itchy? Should we keep giving him that particular food or refrain from it?
I think if you're getting an itchy tongue, go with your gut. Stop. If the tongue looks any different, take a picture. I always love pictures or videos if they're doing a weird thing with their tongue, and then check in with your pediatrician. But we also hear, and we get this all
Stop serving the food entirely, or just in that moment? Like, do you try again the next day?
No, because if that is a true food,
it could be,
if that's actually a food allergic reaction, then the subsequent introduction or exposure can make the allergic reaction even bigger.
So basically, right. So they might just have an itchy tongue today, but tomorrow it could be like hives and wheezing and all the other things.
Yes.
It's not the same every time.
But what's not uncommon, or what is very common is if, you're offered maybe beans, mashed beans, and your baby just absolutely loved them, but they're tooting up a storm, or maybe they're really bloated.
Yeah.
That is not an allergic reaction or necessarily a food sensitivity. That was just a lot of fiber that they had, and they just need, their
Poop blowout.
yes,
It happens.
it happens, and their body
Yeah.
just needs to adjust.
And it's
recalibrate.
normal.
It's normal.
And you don't really need to do anything differently after, other than taking it a little bit slower next time.
Yeah.
There's a full list of allergic reaction symptoms in the book and pictures of what those can look like for ones that are visual on our website at solidstarts.com if you want to kind of help learn about what it looks like, what's mild, what's severe, when to call for help, that kind of thing. So if your baby is having any of those symptoms while eating, stop that food and call your doctor, and don't reintroduce that food again because it could be worse the next time.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Kim, you're going to love this question because it's like deep in feeding therapy kind of geek out land. So do you have any recommendations for lip ties? So this is when you should probably explain that. I hear about tongue ties, but I think they're asking about lip ties.
Yes. So
What is that?
We all have a lip tie. We have a lip tie on the top and we have a lip tie on the bottom. Technically, a lip tie is just the little piece of skin that
Like
attaches
Here,
your
right?
lip
Like right there?
to your gums. We all have, it's called a frenulum for the fancy word. We all have one. There is no reason to believe that a little piece of skin that's a little bit tighter is going to impact your baby's solids experience. There is no research to tell us that there is going to be a change. There's a lot of internet talk to tell you that there's going to be an issue. But generally speaking, in my 15 years of practice, I have not seen a lip tie impact starting solids. Now, if you are worried about it, talk to your pediatrician and get an evaluation done. But if your baby is struggling with solids, I would probably assume there's something else that we need to chase the why on. It's most likely not their lip tie.
Okay. All right. Food throwing. I once remember my son Max took a meatball and threw it like a softball, and it hit the television. And I was so upset. But how do you know? Well, first, how do you deal with throwing? Is the short answer. And how do you know if baby's eating enough if they're throwing and dropping the food?
Yeah. So in infancy, food throwing can be completely normal, just like swiping off the food from the tray. And it's really just a matter of cause and effect. Like, what happens when I do X? Why
It's
happens?
a toy. Food is a toy
It's a
at this
toy.
point.
Yeah.
It is
Testing
a toy.
boundaries.
But also can be a sign that your baby is done with the meal as well. And as far as, consumption goes, if your baby is showing the signs that they're not interested, just like when they're not interested in nursing or not interested in the bottle anymore, despite the fact that your breast may still feel full or there's still milk still in the bottle, they're pushing away, they're turning their head, they're arching back, or, seemingly disinterested, then honor that cue and just
Trust.
trust your baby. Don't force in another bite. Your baby's done.
Okay.
And move on.
Last question. When my baby was younger, he ate everything, but now he's super selective. Is there anything we can do to avoid picky eating?
Yes. Trust your baby and trust what they're communicating with you. The first thing that I think about when it comes to a baby starting to be a little bit more selective is whether they're getting sick or they have teeth popping through. If those molars are starting to pop in around a year, a lot of times we see babies get a little bit more pokey around food because they just don't feel great. A lot of times I'll tell a parent, give it a couple weeks, don't change anything. Keep bringing them to the table, keep offering a wide variety of foods, and if they don't eat, it's okay. And a Jenny Best term, feign indifference. Try to remind yourself that it's okay if they don't eat anything. Finish your meal, move on with your day, offer breast milk or formula later as you would. If you want to prevent this so scary feeding issue, the number one best thing that you can do is continue to remind yourself, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they eat or not. And I know that can feel so scary for a parent, but they need it. Especially in a baby. You always have breast milk and formula to rely on. If you try to chase what they want, if you're running back into the kitchen to get the Cheerios out, if you're running back into the kitchen to try to offer them something else, you're essentially showing your baby that if I refuse what my parent offers me, they're going to bring something else.
Mhm.
And eventually that something else that you bring, I'm not so interested in that either. I'm going to try for something else. And we're now creating a habit
Mhm.
that your toddler is going to learn is very, very effective. And yes, it is really hard to sit at the table with your 11-month-old, offer your family meal, and have them not eat anything.
Mhm.
But if you just move on with your day and say, you must not have been hungry right now, your tummy doesn't want some right now, move on and offer them a breastfeed or a bottle later. They're learning, oh, it's same.
Yeah.
There's one meal offered tonight, and if I'm not interested, that's okay. I'm not going to get pushed to eat it, but I have that choice. I have control over that.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll get some food later.
And for a toddler, if it's not the breast milk or formula after, it would be something like, well, if you're not interested in lunch right now, we'll have snack at 2 o'clock.
Yep.
And there's always that later.
There's always more food
Well,
coming.
my tummy is actually rumbling, and I think the microphone is picking it up, so I think we better wrap it up. No. So thank you for coming. We are so grateful for this community and for Penguin Random House for trusting us and believing us and being our champions for this book. Solid Starts for Babies is out and on the shelves. We're about to go to a bookstore for the first time and see that. Thank you for having us, and get the book, buy the book, and download our app, and we'll see you there.